you know, I do have a lot to say about this list. Because I just don't, with this list, what are the top 25 college football programs or whatever? I feel like I kind of have an idea of what the criteria is in it, but the article, if I read it correctly, it doesn't really explain. I feel like it doesn't explain all the criteria in it, but I'm kind of piecing it together. It seems like it's a mixture of what your past history is, what you're doing more recently, with I feel like it being weighed more toward what you're doing recently, even though there's other instances where it doesn't. And I think it also, I think this list might even take into consideration like NIL and like other things, like how you can do in the transfer portal. And I think that stuff might be thrown in there a little bit. But the fact that there is no real, dare I say, set criteria for this, I just have some issues with it because I feel like it's all over the place. Now, D, should I go 25 to 1 or 1 to 25?
I'm usually a 25 to 1 guy, usually.
Okay. So, at 25, we have SMU. And SMU is it's a weird program historically because, you know, you had the great years of the Pony Express or the Pony Excess if you watch 30 for 30. And that during that time with Eric Dickerson and Craig James and them, SMU was like a national championship caliber team, but that was a while ago. And then they had the death penalty, and then for a while, SMU really wasn't anything for like a long while. And they've gotten good now. Like again, they've actually done really well since they went to the AACC. They were actually pretty good in the AAC. But 25, when I feel like there's programs that were left out of the top 25 that have been about as good in recent times. And, you know, I don't know. I feel like 25, I would probably say that SMU may be a bit overrated. They did make the playoffs. And they have made an ACC championship. They didn't win it, but they did make it. So, I don't entirely have an issue with 25. I just think there's a team that was left off this list that could have been on, that's not on there, that I think could have been higher than them. 24 is Mississippi Ole Miss. I think Kiffin Ole Miss has had a couple good periods, like with Hugh Freeze and then with Lane Kiffin. I guess I'm okay with them at 24. I can't really say they should be higher. But I think they're a team that could be on the rise, especially if I always draw a blank on the Ole Miss. I don't know why I always draw a blank on the Ole Miss's new head coach that was on the staff beforehand, but whatever. But I think Ole Miss, I think they're fine at 24. 23, Iowa. I think 23 is fair for Iowa because they are like the model. They are the model of consistency. Now, I think they have some more down years than people really give them credit to. And they don't really win anything. Like, they haven't won the Big Ten since earlier in Kirk Ferentz's tenure. But they're always right there. They did have a 12-0 season like 10 years ago. I'm okay with Iowa at 23. Washington 22. I could honestly make a case they could be higher. The only problem is they just haven't won a national championship since like the 90s under Don James, which this article mentions that. They did make the championship and they lost to my squad, Michigan. And I think they've been pretty good. Like under Kalen DeBoer, they've been good. Now they did have an 0-12 season under Ty Willingham, which is crazy. And they kind of had some lean years. But I like where their program's at now. I think Jetfish is good. It's just the Big Ten is so loaded that it's going to be really hard for them to get toward the top. But I think if things break their way, they hold serve at home, they could be a possible playoff team this year. And I think they're fine at 22. So right now it sounds like I'm okay with this list. But there's some issues that are coming. 21, Auburn. Auburn. Again, Auburn has such highs and lows. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't you feel like Auburn, like you've seen, they were in the national championship in 2013, and they were in the national championship. They won the national championship when Cam Newton was there, which it doesn't feel like that was that long ago, but it was. But then they've also been really bad of late. So it's like, I don't know. Auburn, like 21 feels right. But I can also argue that they're overrated. Because I feel like a lot of their stuff has happened a long time ago. Like, again, the last time they made a national championship was 2013. And they've been, like, through the Brian Harsin and Hugh Freeze years, these later years, they just haven't really been much. And they just claimed a bunch of national championships, but they don't really have that many. So Auburn, I don't know. I can't really say. I guess I'll say they're fine at 21, but I think they could be overrated.
But they got to be higher than Mississippi, though, right?
Yeah, I would say they have to be. So they couldn't. I could maybe argue. No, I can't argue Washington because Washington hasn't won and neither can Iowa. So yeah, I think Auburn's fine at 21. Now I think about it. 20, Nebraska. Now, are we taking the totality of their program or not? Because if we aren't, then if this is like what you are overall as a program, Nebraska to me is severely underrated because to me Nebraska is still a blue blood. And again, I know that Nebraska's been on some lean time since York Haynes ruined them back in 2002. And they've been on some really lean years, and they are pretty much a shell of what they used to be when we were growing up watching Nebraska. But Nebraska is still a blue blood program. I have a hard time saying that, like, again, I'm kind of skipping ahead here. I have a hard time saying that BYU is a better program in 2026 than Nebraska. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think Matt Rule needs to do more. I feel like Nebraska feels very distant from those things, but they're still there. And I don't know, it just feels kind of disrespectful to a blue blood for them to be at 20. So I would say I think Nebraska is underrated, especially when, again, 19 is BYU. BYU had a good year last year, but they still haven't made the playoffs yet. They had some good years under Lavelle Edwards. They had the one national championship in 1984. But can you really say BYU has done enough to be ahead of Nebraska? I don't know. I don't even think you can really say that they're better than Auburn or Washington. I can do Iowa maybe, but I don't know. I feel like I would argue Boise State, which is the team that I feel like was left out. I could argue that they're up there with BYU. So I don't know. I just don't like BYU at 19. 18 is Florida State. So if we're going right now, I feel like this is fair. But if you're taking in sort of the history of Florida State, I think they're underrated. Florida State just right now is in some bad juju. Like this whole Mike Norvell situation is a mess. It's crazy to think, Dijon, they went 13-1 3 years ago. And it's like you don't feel that about Florida State at all anymore. It was like they went 13-1 or they went 13-0 in the regular season, got left out of the playoff because Jordan Travis got hurt, got obliterated by Georgia in the bowl game where half their team was in the portal or sat out, and then they went 2-10 and 5-7 the last year. And it just feels like those last 2 years for Florida State has been what they've been for like 20 years. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy, but really Florida State is only 3 years removed from a 13-1 season. And the year before that, they won 10 games. And they won a national championship in 2013. It feels like Florida State should be higher than you think about Bobby Bowden in the 90s and stuff. Like Florida State feels like they should be higher than 18. But like if you're going right now, they almost feel like they shouldn't even be in the top 25. So I get Florida State is in a weird position, but I could argue for them being higher, especially when 17 is Indiana. Indiana had one of the most unbelievable seasons that we've seen in college football history. They went 16-0 at Indiana. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy to still think about. But are we really putting them ahead of Florida State and Auburn and all these teams off of 2 years when they were the losingest program of at the very least of the Power Four, if not college football, up until these last 2 years? I can understand Indiana being at the bottom of the top 25, especially considering that they did win the national championship. They went to the playoffs. They've been absolutely spectacular these last 2 years. But does 2 years make up in like all the decades upon decades upon decades of futility? I don't know, man. They did have a little space with Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer where they were good. But I'm sorry. I feel like 17 is just... for Indiana, it's just too high. I get they won the national championship. They're a hot team right now. And they have a chance. They can ascend to great heights. But I'm sorry. 17 is just too... That's overrated for me.
You know, you and I were talking about whether or not this list was about history or about present times. And what confuses me about Indiana being ahead of Florida State is because, okay, so are we saying that Indiana is ahead of Florida State because of present times? Well, then they're significantly ahead of Florida State. Like, it shouldn't even be like one spot ahead. It should be significantly ahead. But if we're talking about history, these histories are not even close. Did people forget how many times Florida State was ranked in the top 5 during the Bobby Bowden era to finish a season? Do they realize that they have 3 national championships versus Indiana has 1? So if we're talking about history, then they shouldn't be close.
Like during the Bobby Bowden era, Florida State was like what Ohio State's consistency is now. Like it was like they were a guaranteed 10-win team every year. And that was back when schedules only had 11 games. Florida State was winning 10 games a season every year. So that's what baffles me about this list is like, what does it all entail? Because I don't know. To me, it's too early for Indiana to be 17 and to be ahead of the likes of Florida State. I mean, even now, Indiana won a national championship. They're out recruiting Florida State maybe because they got that like number 1 receiver in the country that was from Indiana. But like, I don't know if Indiana is like a more attractive recruiting destination than Florida State, even though Florida State has been 7-17 the last 2 years, and Indiana has won like what, 26, 27 games in the last 2 years. it takes more time than that for you to build these things up. And I don't know. It just something doesn't. Even though I understand where Florida State is at and I understand where Indiana is at right now, something doesn't sit right with me with Indiana being over over Florida State.
And I know we want to move on, but what just occurred to me is maybe this is a program trajectory list. Like maybe this is where a snapshot of where they think the programs are headed.
But then why are they talking about stuff that happened in the 80s and the 90s for some of these things? I mean, they talk about, again, we're going on to 16 Tennessee. They're talking about Philip Fulmer's Vols first in the 90s with the national title coming in 1998.
Yeah.
But they
ain't got nothing to do with the goofy stuff they're doing right now.
And, you know, last year they had a good season. Then they had the season with Hendon Hooker. And Tennessee has a great history. It doesn't always feel like it sometimes, but Tennessee has a great history. I know a lot of younger people might not have seen that history, but it's there. It's definitely there. I think I'm okay with Tennessee at 16. I think I'm okay with it. I think they definitely should be ahead of Indiana, but I also think that Florida State and some others should be ahead of Indiana. But, okay, this one, I think as crazy, again, this one feels like this one is a projection because they haven't done anything. And to me, number 15 is Texas A&M. I think they're overrated. I think that Texas A&M is like, I seen somebody compare Texas A&M is United States men's national team soccer.
Interesting.
They have everything they need to be good, and they have a fan base that can be passionate. They have money and resources. I'd even say, to go a step further and say that A&M actually has better recruiting and talent than the United States men's national team. But they have nothing to show for. Forget winning that the last time they won a national championship was 1939. When's the last time you seen Texas A&M win the SEC or the Big 12? You don't see it because it doesn't happen. Even this year, this was like one of their best years ever. They finished the season with a loss to Texas and a loss to Miami, and they didn't go to the SEC championship, and they didn't win a playoff game. They literally have done nothing. So I don't understand how A&M is 15 when they've done nothing. They had like one of the greatest recruiting classes we've ever seen, and they did nothing with it. A lot of it transferred out or didn't really pan out. So I just don't understand how they're at 15. I don't get it. Other than people think they're going to be something that they're not. So 15 A&M. I think now that we're getting up in the list, this is where I'm starting to have issues with program. 14 Florida. I can make a case that they're overrated too. Now, the difference between them, I think what puts them ahead of maybe Tennessee and my phone just started acting weird and it backed out of the list. But I think that what made Florida ahead is that they did have the Urban Meyer era. And that gave them 2 national championships. And they did have the Spurrier era in the 90s where they won a national championship. But of recent times, Florida has not been good. In recent times, Florida has not been good. And they haven't made, in the playoff era, they haven't made the 4-team playoff. They haven't made the 12-team playoff. And they really haven't even been close to doing it. I feel like their best season in recent times was the COVID year when Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts were going crazy, but it's been a long while for the Gators. Now, I think that John Summerall will turn things around. I think he's a fantastic coach. And it's hard to say that A&M or Tennessee or Indiana or Florida State, But I feel like Florida State and Florida are closer to each other than people want to, than they think they are. Because Florida State, even with that disastrous end to the 13-1 season, has been better than Florida in recent years. Like, Florida hasn't had no 13-win season anytime soon. I don't know. I feel like Florida is getting a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt than I think they should. 13, and again, this, to me, I don't get this one. 13 is Clemson. Why are they only 13? Are we that, am I crazy, or are we not that removed from the Dabo Sweeney era? Like, people act like the Dabo era was like 20 years ago. The height of it was 5-6 years ago. I mean, they were in the national championship in 2019. They lost to LSU to some consider one of the greatest college football teams ever in that 2019 LSU team. But the year before that, they won a national championship. Then I think like 2 years before that, and they beat Alabama in that national championship that they won in 2018. They beat Alabama, like good Nick Saban Alabama, 44-16. And then, they, like, Clemson is a good program. Heck, Clemson won the ACC not this year, but the year before. That's why people had high expectations for them this year. Now, they didn't meet those expectations. And I think this is a prediction based upon Dabo doesn't really use the transfer portal. Recruiting is kind of dipped. And they don't have that same mystique that they did as Pete Clemson. But to put them 13 seems a bit disrespectful considering they're only a year removed from winning the ACC. I'm sorry, that feels disrespectful to me. Especially when number 12 is Penn State. Answer this for me, Dijon. What has Penn State won recently?
I mean, they've made it to the playoffs a few times, but they haven't won anything.
Yeah, they made the semifinal, but they didn't win the Big Ten that year, and they didn't make the national championship that year. They lost to Ohio State. They had just as disastrous of a season as Clemson did last year. Now, you could say, well, they beat Clemson in the Pinstripe Bowl. For real. Y'all can't sit up here and say that bowl games don't matter and they're meaningless exhibition games and then use that over. Penn State ain't won a national championship since, like, the 90s.
I thought it was the 80s.
Maybe it was the 80s. I thought they won one in 91.
That was Washington and Miami. They shared one. They split in 91.
You sure Penn State didn't win a championship in the 90s?
I thought that was the 80s. I thought it was when they beat Miami in 86.
Well, yeah,
when we turned the ball over 5 times.
I thought they might have won one in the 90s. I could be totally wrong about that. I'll have to look that up.
But they definitely never had a dynastic period like Clemson had. Never.
Yeah, they definitely did not have a dynastic.
So how are they ahead of them on this list?
So
and Clemson won the ACC more recently than Penn State won the Big Ten. So what are we talking about?
I don't see how in any world Penn State is ahead of Clemson. I just don't.
And even if they're trying to do like a future projection, like Penn State just hired a new coach. We don't know how that's going to go.
Right.
Clemson, at least we know they got the same guy that they've, won championships with. So
I'm like Penn State. I don't understand this one at all. Like I think you can maybe argue for them being over Florida and A&M, which again I think A&M is overrated.
Even that's debatable over Florida.
But yeah, I don't even think I can argue Penn State over Florida that well. But over Clemson, absolutely not. That makes no sense to me. 11 is Oregon. Oregon is so weird because Oregon feels like just looking at them like two now, as the great expressions Uzun would say. Two now, Oregon feels like a top 3 program. But if we're taking in the totality of their program, they are completely overrated.
Ooh.
Oregon has never won a national championship.
Facts.
Oregon has never won a national championship. Indiana can say they've won a national championship. Oregon cannot. Oregon can have all the Nike money they want. They've made 2 national championships. I'll give them that. But they didn't win them. Oregon has never won a national championship. They look fantastic under Dan Lanning. They're definitely ascending, and I think they will win a national championship under Dan Lanning. And I think it could be as early as this year they could win a national championship. But they haven't done it. You're putting them over blue blood programs or even programs that have a lot of history. I don't know, man. I just feel like they need to do more. I don't know. I mean, they've had 16 10-win seasons since 2000, and that's really impressive. And they do look really good now, but they ain't won no national championship. That's tough. 10 is USC. And you know what? I could argue for them being underrated, and I could argue for them being overrated. I can argue for them being overrated because they haven't really done anything since the Pete Carroll era. They haven't made the 4-team or the 12-team playoff. They haven't had sustained success with any coach they've had since Pete Carroll. And they've had Lane Kiffin, which I think he got that job a bit premature. Clay Helton didn't do it. And then Lincoln Riley was like the home run hire that they made. And a lot of people have him on the hot seat because he hasn't done anything. But I can also say that they're underrated because they are a blue blood of the highest order. You talk about 11 national championships, the amount of Heisman trophy winners they've produced, the amount of NFL players they've produced, even in down times. Like now, they could produce Caleb Williams and guys that are in the NFL. USC, even if you want to talk about from a foundational purpose, USC has California on lock. They just had a number 1 recruiting class. USC is set up that it just any minute now they could just break through and they could be back on what they were. So I can make a case either way. I would lean toward they are underrated because, again, I just respect them as such a blue blood. But I could also see where they haven't really done anything in recent time. I mean, their last national championship was 2004.
Yeah, 2004.
Yeah, so that's a long time ago. 9 is your school, the U, Miami. Dijon, it's weird, dude. I could make a case that they're overrated, and I could make a case that they're fine where they're at. I don't think they can go much higher than 9. And the reason why I think you guys could be overrated is because you guys have been, and you know that, you guys have been bad for quite a bit of time. Like ever since the Larry, like the descension under Larry Coker, y'all been on some hard times. Now, I think you guys are out of those times because now you strung together 2 consecutive 10-win seasons. But for the longest time, what was it, 20 years where you only had 1 10-win season?
Yeah, from like 2004 to, okay, we go from 2004 to 2025, which is, 21 years?
Yeah.
There was 3 10-win seasons, and 2 of them were in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
The other one was 2017. So
I think there's some teams like Oregon who've had more recent success than you guys. Now, again, but when you throw in your history, you guys have 5 national championships, some of the best teams we've ever seen. Hall of Famers. Forget NFL players. Miami was producing Hall of Famers. at a level that was crazy. And I think if you look at like things now, I mean, transfer portal, you guys have that on lock. Recruiting, you guys have that on lock. You guys are set up to be, especially with the ACC. It never doesn't seem like all the power teams can all get it together at once. And like right now, you guys are the top dog in the ACC, even though you haven't won it. I could see you guys going on a nice little. I think when you guys do break through and win the ACC, you guys could go on a pretty serious dynastic run, considering on how you guys are set up. But based on what you've done in the last 20 or so years, and the fact that you haven't won an ACC since you joined the ACC, I think 9 is as high as you can go, but I could argue you guys being lower.
I don't have a problem with the ranking, and I agree with you. Miami could be even a bit lower. My issue is with the write-up that they had in the article. And the article just made more about this idea of like impropriety happening within the program and outside of it. And I'm like, and the way it was written, it was like it was insinuating that was the reason for the success at the program. And that's just inappropriate.
That is, Miami was good because they had talent, homegrown talent that no one else in the country could have access to. And now that's why everybody's recruiting Miami now. 8, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I think, is fine at 8. And the crazy thing about it, Oklahoma, is they could almost be Ohio State-like in recent times, since the 2000s. If they would just win a damn national championship. I mean, doesn't it feel crazy to say that the last time that Oklahoma has won a national championship was 2000? And, like, I feel like they've had better teams than that 2000 Oklahoma team. But that still remains the team. Like, Oklahoma's quarterback in that team is the head coach at Tennessee now. And he's been the head coach at Tennessee for a good little minute now. Like, Oklahoma is a blue blood of the highest order. They've had consistency from 2000 on. They just don't win a national. They've made national championships. I think they made national championships in 2003, in 2009. I think there's national championships that I'm forgetting that they made. They just don't win them. They've made the 4-team playoff. They've made the 12-team playoff. They've produced Heismans. They've done everything that you need to do as a program except win a damn national championship. I think the moment Oklahoma wins a national championship, they are going to be back near the top of college football. But now it's going to be tougher than ever for them to win a national championship because they're in the SEC and one of their locked opponents is Texas. So that's really tough. That's real tough. But Oklahoma, I like it 8. 7, my favorite program, Michigan. I argue that Michigan is underrated, but I can see where people might think that they're overrated. And it doesn't even have anything to do with the cheating scandal because I don't give a damn about that. Because just like you guys want to we want to talk about Miami. Now ours is, I think, is a little bit more pronounced because we might have stole signals or whatever. Even though I think that's completely overblown, and I think Michigan was stupid for trying to sweep it under the rug, where if they would have just self-reported it, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal as it was. But that's neither here nor there. But Michigan won a national championship in 2023. They had a 3-year Big Ten championship run. And while they have fallen off in the last 2 years, they still have won 17 games in the last 2 years. And this is considered down. They just added one of the better coaches in college football in Kyle Whittingham. They added what a lot of pundits I've heard say with some of the best staff hires in the country on both offense and defense. Michigan has more wins than any program ever. They have 12 national championships. This article even says they're one of the more consistent programs in the country. NIL money, crazy. They just need a president and a AD that's willing to use it more often. Michigan, I could argue, could be higher. When you consider, there's a lot going for them. I mean, there's a program that's ranked higher than them that I would argue Michigan is better than them. I know it might not seem like it right now, but Michigan has done more than them, and they have a lot of the same resources that they got. So while 7 is good, and I'm not complaining about that, I think Michigan could be higher. 6, LSU. LSU is so weird because LSU, when they are good, they are national championship good. But they also have these big sinkhole areas. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's periods of time, like under Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, where LSU wasn't good at all. But they also won national championships. And then the Brian Kelly experiment was a disaster. But LSU had a run of 3 coaches winning national championships in a row. And you know they basically have a monopoly over the talent in Louisiana, which Louisiana is one of the more talented areas for football. They just spent $40 million on their roster for this upcoming season. So you know they got a lot of things going for them. They're not necessarily a blue blood, but they are a pretty big program. Maybe it's the Michigan man in me. I'd put Michigan higher based upon their entire totality of their history, but I could also see LSU being at 6. It's tough. 5, Texas. This might be blasphemy to some people, but I actually think they're overrated. And the reason why I say that is they have all the infrastructure and they are a blue blood program. I mean, I don't think there's too many programs, if there's any programs, that have more money than Texas. I mean, they have the NIL, like it says in this article, they have a deep war chest that is needed in the NIL era. But what has it really amounted to? They haven't won a Big Ten. They haven't won a SEC title. They haven't won a national championship. I think they're set up to do that this year. But I feel like Texas needs to have more. Because there was a long time after when they lost the national championship to Alabama. There was a long period of time where Texas was no good. Like, you remember the Charlie Strong era? Do you remember the Tom Herman era? Do you remember the early years of the Sark era where they lost to Kansas? Texas has been was not good for a long while. It's fairly recent that Texas got back to being Texas. And even with Texas being back to being up to a relative standard of what's good for Texas, Texas hasn't won a national championship since Vince Young in 2005. And there was a long period of time where Texas was no good. To put them at 5 based upon what they could be, I can get. But I still think it's a little too early. Again, I'd argue that Michigan should be higher than Texas. I know Texas has beaten Michigan like the last 2 years, but Michigan won a national championship in 2023, and it was the same. And in that same year, Texas made the playoffs, but didn't beat Washington. I just think that Texas needs to do something more recently, especially when you consider the Charlie Strong and Tom Herman eras were disastrous. That's just me, though.
Why is Texas ahead of LSU?
I don't think they should be. LSU's won a national championship. They've had higher highs than Texas. So, I don't know. I think that Texas should probably be around 7 and 8 with Oklahoma. So that's just me. 4, Notre Dame. And as usual, Notre Dame is completely overrated. I'm telling you what, if you're telling me that, I'm sorry, Michigan should be number 4. Maybe this is the Wolverine in me talking, but Michigan should be number 4. Explain to me, why is Notre Dame number 4? If you want to talk history, Michigan's history is right up there with Notre Dame, and Michigan's won a national championship more recently. If you want to talk now, Notre Dame didn't make the playoffs just like Michigan didn't make the playoffs. Like, I get Notre Dame feels real close to winning a national championship. In fact, they made the national championship 2 years ago, but they didn't win it. They lost to Ohio State. Notre Dame hasn't won a national championship in my lifetime, and I am 36 going on 37 in October. Why are they number 4? Why are they number 4? They had some really lean times under Ty Willingham and Charlie Weiss. They had lean times under Brian Kelly. Notre Dame is, I swear, no sport, I feel like, does more for one program than what college football does for Notre Dame. Do I think that Notre Dame in like the next 5 years will win a national championship? Yes, I do. But they haven't done it yet. And they didn't even make the playoffs last year. And they sat out their bowl game like some cowards. I don't see why Texas is behind Notre Dame. I don't see why LSU is behind Notre Dame. I don't see why Michigan's behind. I don't even see why Oklahoma is behind Notre Dame. I can argue with Notre Dame being over Miami because Miami had a pretty dry spell for 20 years. But even Miami's won multiple national championships since the last time Notre Dame did. To me, Notre Dame is the most overrated team on this list. Until Marcus Freeman breaks through and actually does it, I'm sorry, they're overrated to me. Now, the top 3, I'm cool with. I think number 3, Georgia, I think they belong right where they're at. And the reason why is they are the hot team. Like, I think they're the standard of now. They've consistently won the SEC. They won back-to-back national championships. In what was it? 2020 and 2020. It was 2021 and 2022. Kirby has that program flying high. They are doing great. The reason why I can't put them higher is because they don't have the long-term history like the top 2 do. But as of right now, I would argue that Georgia is the gold standard. No, they haven't won a national championship more recently than Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana. But they're on somewhat of a dynastic run. If they win a national championship like next year, would you be surprised? No. I think that Georgia, but I'm perfectly fine with Georgia at 3 because I can't put them ahead of the next 2. And I'm just going to say the next 2 because I'm going to talk about them together. And that's number 2 is Alabama and number 1 is Ohio State. Really, you can't go wrong with either one of them being 1 or 2. It just all depends upon how you want to look at this thing. If you want to say that Ohio State is number one, which is what this article is saying. Ohio State is 165-21 since 2012. That is mind-numbing consistency. Elite consistency. 21 losses since 2012. That's 21 losses in 14 years. Insane. Ohio State has won at least 10 games every full season but one since 2005. The 2 years they didn't win them was one 2020 with the COVID year, and it was the Luke Fickell year, which I believe was 2011. They went 6-7. Or maybe it was. I can't.
No,
remember.
you're correct. And they lost to Miami.
But Ohio State in all of college football is the true model of consistency. Ohio State has never lost more than 7 games in a season, and they've only lost 7 games in a season twice. Might even have been once. Ohio State, all they do is win, like consistently.
I think it was twice because it was one a long time ago, and then there was one when Fickell was
Yeah,
there.
when Fickell was the coach.
So it's twice.
Like, you don't get a more just simply winning on a year-to-year basis better than Ohio State. And that's why I could argue that they're number one. However, my argument for Alabama being number one is that Ohio State has a more consistent trajectory, but Alabama's had higher peaks. Alabama's won 18 national championships. And they have 2 of the greatest coaches of all time, including Nick Saban, who won 6 national championships at Alabama. The run that Nick Saban had at Alabama will never be forgotten. To put in perspective, we're saying what we're saying about Ohio State, right? Nick Saban won 6 national championships at Alabama. Ohio State has won 9 national championships as a program. Yeah. Alabama, when it's at its peak, man, they've ran college football. When they had Bear Bryant, they ran college football. When they had Nick Saban, they ran college football. And that's leaving out coaches like Gene Stallings and other coaches that have won at Alabama. Alabama gets you those national titles. Now, where you can argue against Alabama is they've had pitfalls. Like there was the Shula era that was bad. After they won, they lost in the Orange Bowl to Michigan in 2000. They were preseason ranked number 3, and they finished the season 3-8. You remember Freddie Millins and all of them. Alabama's had some craters that Ohio State has never had. Like Ohio State, even under Cooper, was like almost a guaranteed 10 wins. Alabama had great heights, but they also had some craters. So that's why, while I would put Alabama ahead, but just because I respect the fact that they've won 18 national championships, you get no argument against me putting Ohio State number 1, because Ohio State is the goal when it comes to consistency and winning and being perpetual about it. They are the gold standard. Like, it'd be even with the schedule that they have this year, which is really difficult, it would be a shock if they didn't win 10 games this season. This is all Ohio State. If they expand the playoffs to 24, Ohio State regular season won't even matter because they're going to make the playoffs every year. Ohio State is as consistent as it gets. So that's why I'm fine with Ohio State being number 1. But that's my list. Again, I just think that there's some teams that I think are quite a bit high. Like, again, I said, Penn State, Notre Dame, I think are some teams that are high. I think Michigan, I'm trying to take my maize and blue glasses off, even though these are silver. I'm trying to take my, but I just think that Michigan has been more consistent and has done more recently than some of the teams that are ahead of them. I think that Boise State got snubbed because they're not a Power Four but like you talk about winning consistently, you could argue Boise State is right up there in terms of winning consistently with the likes of Ohio State. So I don't know. I think that Clemson is severely underrated. I feel like we've just forgot. Like we just act like the Dabo Sweeney years were 20 years ago. They're only a year removed from an ACC championship. But yeah, that's my thought on the list.
That ain't your list. That's USA Today raggedy list.
Yeah, it's not my list because mine would be better.